think it's very, very powerful, though, if I can get it across. It's called ERVs, or endogenous retroviruses. These are viruses that actually reverse transcribe their RNA into DNA, and this DNA is integrated into the genome of its host cell. And if this host cell passes on this DNA with the retrovirus in a sperm cell or an egg cell, it passes from generation to generation, becoming endogenous within that species, meaning it's always there from birth. Now, these endogenous retroviruses have been used, or could be used potentially, as a way to track lineages. If, for instance, apes or the precursor to mammals had an ERV that was inserted, we'll call that ERV1, and they continue on, and that branch splits. There's a branch that goes off, and that's maybe perhaps the precursor to mice and rats, and we'll call that ERV. And then endogenous retrovirus is inserted into that lineage, ERV2, and the other lineage, perhaps great apes, ERV3 is inserted there. You can see the pattern is if we have the ERVs that are only located upon our branch, but we have, as you go closer and closer down the line, we become more and more similar, or we have the same ERVs that the mice and rats would, this will be evidence that we do share a common descent. And scientists are actually, as they continuously map more and more genomes, they're finding this out. These are following their predictions. These aren't just, they're not just accommodating the evidence afterwards. They learned about these ERVs, and now as they're starting to map more and more genomes, they are seeing that the evidence does fit. The evidence supports their claims. Again, this would be an attempt to falsify evolution. By the way, if someone falsified evolution as a scientist, they would be extremely popular. Their career would skyrocket. That's, not that everyone hates evolution, or not scientists don't hate evolution, but finding something new, finding something that discredits a particular theory is one of the most amazing things a scientist could do. So they're not in conspiracy. They're not trying to cover up anything. This is what the evidence genuinely tells us. And in general, evolution doesn't hinge upon one line of evidence. There's so many lines of evidence from geology, paleontology, microbiology, DNA evidence. All of these things converge on the same general truth. They're all consistent, and they are all consistent with other non-biological theories that we share. They're all consistent with geology. So these aren't, again, they're internally consistent and consistent with other forms of science. Real quick, he talked about the first and second law of thermodynamics, arguing that those completely disprove a natural origin of the universe. First law of thermodynamics, like he says, energy or matter cannot come from anything. Just as a side note, not necessarily true. If you study up on quantum mechanics, there is a lot of evidence to support that matter and energy do spontaneously originate. Not terribly relevant, but I'm a physics nerd, so it's kind of interesting to me. However, he talks about how that falsifies the Big Bang. The Big Bang does not claim that matter and energy came from everything. The Big Bang describes the expansion of what we believe to be an infinitely small point in space prior to our current time. So it doesn't say that matter and energy came from nothing. I know that's a very common argument. It's thrown around a lot, but it's just based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what Big Bang science says. Second law of thermodynamics, he talks about how it shows that the universe cannot be eternal. And he says it falsifies the Big Bang theory because entropy should be increasing. I don't think he explicitly said that, but I know that's what a common statement is made, that entropy should be increasing. Well, first off, second law of thermodynamics says that entropy either remains constant or increases. It does not say strictly increasing. But entropy is based on two things, the amount of heat and the volume of the given substance. So at the beginning of the Big Bang theory, the universe was, if not infinitesimally small, extremely small. And all of this heat was in this one spot. So the volume was essentially zero. So there was essentially, not exactly, but essentially, you get the point, zero entropy. As the volume has expanded, the entropy has just gone up because the volume has expanded. And that's what entropy really states, is that entropy increases, and it does increase. We witness that all over the place. Now, within the confines of the universe, small areas can decrease if there are mechanisms to allow for that to occur, as long as they're offset by the additional increase in entropy in other areas. So those two laws are no problem for any scientist, even creationist or evolutionist, because like I said, there are many scientists who are creationists. Also, quick note, he talked about how there's thousands of scientists who are creationists. There was a study done, I want to say, if you're really interested, I have the citation, I can tell you later. I think it was in 1997, they did, or not a study, they did a survey, and they limited it to relevant fields of evolutionary biology. And there was 480,000 scientists in America alone that they asked if they were creationists or evolutionists. Only 700 of them, and this isn't evolution, this is fields pertaining to evolution, only 700 of them claim themselves as creationists. That's less than 0.15%. So if you want to bring up numbers, first off, I don't think numbers are terribly relevant because I'm sure Bill would agree it's what the evidence dictates, not necessarily what people think. But if you want to bring up numbers, creationists are farly outnumbered. And again, that's in America alone. Other countries are much further on the other side. Other countries would probably be less than 0.10%. So, saying that there's, even if, I grant you, even if there are 1,000 or 2,000 people, there's still upwards of 500,000 who would disagree with that. In terms of numbers alone, that doesn't speak very highly to the creationist model. I think that's about it, all I have. Actually, I think that's about it. Are we asking each other questions now, or are we waiting for later?
Rebuttal.
Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Phil made a lot of points. He says that no evidence was presented. We have two laws of science. And if the first law of thermodynamics has been falsified, Phil, I'd be very happy to hear about that, and that would win a Nobel Prize. I've studied it, I understand it pretty well. It has not been falsified. Second law of thermodynamics has not been falsified. The universe is increasing in entropy, going downhill. The law of biogenesis has not been falsified. Now, you can say that doesn't falsify the theory of evolution, but that doesn't make it true. Those are laws of science that have not been falsified. Now, you said you cannot test for the theory of evolution. Well, people often say, well, creationists don't make any testable predictions. Well, I would disagree. This man made predictions. Francisco Redi, he predicted life only comes from life, which is a life-saving thing. People used to believe that rags plus wheat could equal mice. Meat plus air equals maggots, okay? He did an experiment, won't spend much time on it. He put a cheesecloth on meat and showed that the flies are not coming out of the meat. It's flies laying, or the maggots weren't coming from the meat. The flies were laying eggs on the cheesecloth. You follow me? A predictable, life-saving thing on how to preserve our food. Who knows who that is? Louis Pasteur, a fantastic man of science, fantastic creationist. He predicted life could only come from life. Many things he invented, including pasteurization. If you kill all the little bad guys in milk, you're not going to get any more if you isolate it. Another creationist making fine predictions. Okay. Now, if there is so much evidence for the theory of evolution, I think it would be a good time to present it. Which fossils are you talking about? People could say, oh, there's many, many fossils. Where are they? Speciation was brought up. I have a slide on it. The founder effect. Real quickly on speciation. Suppose you had 100,000 snails. You build a 405 throughway through them. They can no longer reproduce. After a few generations, they may no longer interbreed. You follow me? Because of different morphology, they might start to have different scents, or they might have mutations where they can't do it. Well, the evolutionist would say speciation. The creationist would say, no, they are still what? They are still snails that has lost genetic information. That's an example of extinction, not the theory of evolution. It's an example of the loss of information. Okay, so he talked about time. He goes, well, you don't expect to see it. This takes millions and millions of years, and I have to break out the secret weapon of evolution. I knew it would come up. The magic wand of time. What is your evidence for bacteria being the ancestors to a blue whale? Oh, wait. This takes